I thought that dreams belonged to other men, 'cause each time I got close, they fall apart again.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining me today in the Locker Room. I'm Alan Locher. As you all know, I grew up on Guiding Light and was a teenager myself when Beth, Lujack, and the Galahads were stirring up lots of trouble in Springfield. When Philip hired Andy Ferris to sabotage the club that Lujack and Floyd were building, he went too far and blew it up. Beth was blinded. Philip, out of guilt, enrolled her in a blind school. The New York Daily News covered this as Guiding Light worked with a local New York City school for the blind to bring accuracy to the story. I happened to notice that story in the New York Daily News, and that story included 221 West 26th Street, where Guiding Light used to film. Long before I started working on the show, I was a high school student who ventured into New York City to find my way to the studio, beginning my long friendship with Judi, Vincent, and many other Springfield residents. I am thrilled to have these two talented Emmy Award-winning actors with me today. Please welcome to the Locker Room, Judi Evans and Vincent Irizarry. Hello.
Hello.
Hello, everybody.
I kind of had to do that. Everyone kept talking about the Almost Paradise thing, and I just thought it would be a great way to start.
Who
What do
are
you
those
remember?
young people?
As one of the fans wrote, when soaps used to have money.
Yeah, that's right. Well,
Yes.
honestly, I don't think Almost Paradise was as popular until we aired it on our show. I think it was probably much cheaper to get the licensing rights to it when we got it. It kind of really just catapulted into like a major success.
Footloose, right? Is it from Footloose?
Yeah, but I think it was before. It was
Right before it came out, I think, or
it was before
Right.
it came out. I think it was before Footloose came out. So,
What do you remember about that shoot?
oh my gosh, it was April, and we were shooting in Montauk.
Oh,
And the
wow.
thing that I will always remember, that somehow, with the brilliant writing staff we had, somebody didn't think that it wouldn't be too cold to go swimming in the ocean on Long Island in April. And I do remember that with Judi and I, we had scenes with dialogue in the ocean, and we could only go in for like 10, 15 seconds at a time, and then we'd run out, and they'd be throwing towels and blankets all over us, and our lips were blue. During these
they
scenes.
were blue.
It was absolutely freezing. The water was absolutely freezing.
Well, anywhere on the East Coast in April, the water, I mean, it doesn't get warm in the Atlantic till about July here.
Right.
That's right. It was ridiculous. But yeah, I think they even shortened the scene at one point, because it was a long scene that we're in the water, just enjoying it.
Frolicking.
It was torture. It was torture. I remember that. We were both like, oh my gosh, who came up with this idea? So,
that's so funny. Well, Judi, before I forget, I know the fans, your accident and then COVID, how are you feeling?
I'm doing much better. It's been a few months. I've been working with a trainer. I'm still having some lung issues and a little bit of neurological, but we're working on it and gonna get there.
You look wonderful, sweetie. You look
honey,
beautiful.
thank you. I love
really
you.
Do. I love you too, honey.
There was a lot of outpouring, when you had that accident.
Sure.
But you've been back on a horse, right?
For about 10 seconds. It was so funny because I was doing a little movie up north, and we were only supposed to be working around the horses. There were no riding scenes, and I was sitting. It was very hot, and I was sitting in one of production trailers cooling off, and I look out the window and I see them saddling the horse, and I'm like, huh. And then I see like a girl in shorts and flip-flops get on, and somebody walk her around. Then a couple more people got up and run her around. And so I came out and I was like, and they all knew I'd had the accident. So they're like, you want to get on? I'm like, yeah. So I jump on, and just as I jumped on, I knew the horse was 22. So I figured, oh, that's pretty safe. And the owner says, you know, she's a barrel horse and they got her all hyped up. She's ready to go. And I went, uh-oh. So I rode her a little bit, trotted her a little bit. I was like, okay, I'm good. I think I gotta wait till. And I still had my blood clot screening and still on blood thinners. So I gotta be careful not to fall. But I'm hoping to really get back on in the next couple months.
Wow.
Well,
yeah.
as they say, you got to get back on, right? You know?
Right.
Oh,
no matter what.
I know. It scares me. I think I saw recently, I think you posted a video of you riding, weren't you?
Yes. That was the day before.
And I was, it was scaring me, to be honest with you. It really did. I'm watching you like, because you were like galloping. You were like,
she was going a little bit.
She was going, and I'm like, holy crap, man, what the hell is she doing? You know, but good for you. Good for you.
Yeah, that's what I and it was so funny because the day before was the first day I'd been back on a horse in about 5 months. Because like I said, I had been in a really dark place, and my husband kept encouraging me, you know, you got to go work with the horses. You'll feel better. Because I wouldn't leave the house. I wouldn't leave the couch, you know, whatever. So I went out on that Friday, and it was a great ride. She was amazing. It was beautiful. We came back in one piece. I thought, oh, and it gives me peace to ride. It's the only place where I don't know, you've got to concentrate so hard you forget everything else.
Yeah.
So next day I go out, woohoo, this is going to be great.
Yeah. But, I know. And you have so much going on, but I'm so happy, honey, that you're looking great and that you're working and you're healthy. And, you know, it's great to see that.
It's so great to see you. It's so great.
Yeah, it's great to see you too. And we did communicate over the last few months.
I was just going to say, it's been so nice. You really uplifted me so much, and I can't express enough how much you mean to me. And how much, I know. I'm like,
no, I know, but it's the same here, sweetie. Really, I mean, and I remember calling because I just wanted you to know how many people were just sending up well wishes to you and prayers, and how much everybody loved you. And you know, it was important. I know you've been going through so much, and you know, I just want you to know that everybody just really does. They do love you so much. You know,
I love you so much.
I hope you feel that from the fans, because even just in putting this together, I can see the love. I mean, it's really, I mean, think about how long ago Beth and Lujack are, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, that, it really, I you know, it's making, you know, like I said, I was in high school, you know?
Sure.
You know,
37 years ago.
Oh my God! It feels like yesterday, though.
No, it really does.
Like,
and people
heck?
still call me Lujack on the street sometimes when I'm walking, or like, and it's pretty amazing because that character, the Beth and Lujack characters together, just had this sort of indelible quality that people just remember it. You know, it really stayed with them, resonated with them, and for me, it was amazing. It was the first TV job I had ever had. I only worked
both of you, right? Both of you.
Yep.
You too. You too.
That was yours.
And you were probably on the show for at least a year before I came on.
Right.
Yeah.
About that.
And I was only supposed to be there for 3 days. You know, the character was written for 3 days. They gave me 3 more days. And then they offered me a long-term contract. They wanted 3 years. I wanted 1, and we settled on 2. And I remember that the first time I announced that I was going to be on the show as a contract was during the holiday party that December.
Right. I remember that.
I remember sharing with everybody that they just signed me on the contract. So
those three days, Vincent, was that, because I don't remember your exact first day, but I know that you robbed company. Was that after your contract? I don't know if you remember.
Yes, that was after the contract.
Okay.
My first day on the show was actually me showing up at the college, the university where all of you guys were, Beth and Philip and
with your fedora.
Rick, yeah, with my fedora, my suspenders. They were doing this. I guess it was the Beat It. It was a Beat It like copy of what they were wearing. And I was like, we were like the stupidest looking gang ever. I mean, we really were.
You were so tough.
We were not scary at all. And I am here, and just remember that I literally weighed at that time like 140 pounds, you know. So I was this really scrawny looking, you know, prototypical
they gave
starving
you those
actor.
sleeveless t-shirts all the time.
Yeah, I know. And I'm the one that cut them. I cut it all around the top and the sides. I did that because I just wanted to give some character to it. I was the low budget character on the show. It was all t-shirts. They spent very little money on my character to bring me on, and it was just, that's all I had, with t-shirts and the leather jacket that was faux
The
leather.
leather jacket might have been the most expensive part of your wardrobe.
Probably. It probably
was.
So it was,
I mean,
it's
amazing for 3 days, and then, you know, to
Wow.
build to 6, and then a contract out of that.
He made
Yeah.
such an impression on
Yeah.
everybody. It was his charisma, his acting. He blew everybody away. It was like, grab that guy before he gets away.
Well, it was interesting because right after they signed me, I went and had a meeting with the whole writing staff at CBS in Midtown, and it was with Pam Long and the whole staff. And they just wanted to meet me and talk with me. And we talked for like an hour, the whole writing staff. And just, they wanted to find out about my life and about, you know, my interests, my musical interests and everything. Because I also played piano and guitar. And it was very interesting because I had never had that opportunity to sit down with the whole writing staff and talk with them. And that was like I was probably on contract for maybe a few weeks when we did that. I think that we just all saw potential in the character, but I didn't feel like I was the prototypical looking actor for daytime. As I said, I was this scrawny guy with a fedora and a nose, man. And
Stop
it.
it.
That was it.
Stop
A fedora and a
it.
nose.
No.
A fedora and a nose.
And
That's all you need.
but then I was standing up against Grant Alexander, who's, you know, wall-to-wall muscles on his forehead and his chest, and I'm like looking at him, he goes, "You know," and he could have easily gone like, "Get the hell out of here," you know. Honestly.
Yeah. That's
funny.
very funny. Well, talk about, because everybody loves to hear stories, Betty Ray. I mean, she was such a iconic casting director in this business. What do you remember? Judi, you auditioned first in LA, right?
Yes. Boy, she was amazing. She was an amazing lady. And
she really was.
Seriously, and so good with actors, really cared about. You know, she saw theater at least 2 or 3 times a week, all the time. She was always looking for actors and really gave a lot of respect to actors. And so she was amazing, could put you at ease. And casting directors, you know, you're already nervous. And half the time you go in there and they're like, oh, yeah, next. You know, so she was amazing. How about you, Vince?
You know, my first experience with her was my audition, obviously, and that was in New York. And it was crazy because my audition scene was Lujack walking into the ladies' room to flirt with Mindy. That was the scene. And so I actually walked outside. I don't know if you remember, Judi, the way that the offices were set up was Betty Ray's office. Right next to it was the production office, and there was a door in between, and then there was a door out to the hall that I would go in to meet with her. But I said to her, "Can I go out and come in as if I'm making an entrance?" She said, "Sure." So I went into the production office, and Hope Smith was there. She was a PA at the time, and others were there, and they all looked at me and said, "I'll be out in a second. Just give me a second." Right? And they're like, "Okay." So I go in, and I actually improvised with Betty. I laid down across her desk, took out a cigarette, lit it. And we just were hanging out talking. I was offering her a cigarette, and we were doing the scene, the lines in between, improvising with each other, and I was just going all out and having fun with it. We finished the scene, and Betty Ray said, "Can you hold on for a minute? I want to get something." She brought Gail Colby in. She said, "Let's do that again." So okay, so I did the exact same thing. Went outside and with Hope Smith and everybody. "Oh yeah, just one second." And they're like, "It's okay, go ahead, don't worry about it." Walked in and did the scene for her, and I just started a job that day. I had trailed for a few days at Joe Allen's on Restaurant Row and Theater Row, over there. And it was my first day that I was going to be having my own station as a server, as a waiter. And I went to work after the audition, and my agent called, and it was the phone behind the bar. They called me right before I started the shift. And my agent told me I got the part. And I was like, "Wow, that's awesome. I got the part." And everybody at work was like, "Well, you're going to stay here?" I said, "It's only 3 days, man. I'm not going anywhere. I'm here, you know?" And there, it just so happened, and I don't know who it was, but there was an actress that was on the show for years and had just left. She was there that night, and somebody introduced me to her. But I think she had, I don't remember what her name was, because I didn't watch the show before. And she seemed like she was not in a good place about it, and she didn't seem very happy to meet somebody that was doing the show, to be honest with you. Yeah. So, but anyway, that was the beginning of it. That was how it started. I was doing a 3-day gig, and Betty was fantastic. I had a great time auditioning with her, and I just thought she was an awesome casting director to go with it with me.
Well, she picked the two of you, you know, so good job, Betty.
Yeah.
One of our fans had sent this to me earlier today. She said, when I was in 5th grade, her name's Angela. She said, when I was in 5th grade, Beth and Lujack were on, and our teacher would turn on the TV at 3 to keep us quiet and let us watch because she loved the show so much.
Oh my goodness.
Isn't that great?
Really
There's an education.
There's a good education.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, 5th grade.
I have to write that teacher and say thank you.
Yeah.
Spawned a huge following for the show.
You know, I'll be honest with this. It's kind of funny because, and I know you would probably remember this, Judi, that it was really Beth and Philip when I came on the show. You guys were also like a huge couple at that time. And when Lujack came on, it took a while for the audience to like get excited about the possibility of Beth and Lujack. And I do attribute it in a large part to the writing. They did such a great job with it. And you teaching me how to read, and me, you know, me with my bravado and the whole thing, and you breaking it down and seeing the vulnerability of my character, and then bringing in Beverly McKinsey and the whole thing. It all really, they did such a great job of creating a backstory for the character. And
well, I think writing for sure, but you guys, I mean, think of Judi. You signed 1 3-year contract and were part of 2 super couples in that time.
It was definitely like, the writing, the writing. I mean,
you know, like that's amazing. And you know, then the writing, because Philip and Beth were beloved, and then for the writing to work so well that they fell in love with Lujack and Beth, it's like, that's magic.
It was back in the day when they can really take their time developing characters and building stories.
That's very true. That was, and I attribute that mostly because of the impact of social media. That everybody has access now. Everybody.
Yeah.
And it's immediate. So you can watch an episode on the show and really start commenting on it immediately online. And unfortunately, I think that impacts some of the new actors that come on a show because people don't give them the opportunity to develop the characters.
Right.
And I honestly, given how people responded to me in the beginning, I don't know if Lujack would have had the opportunity to develop to the point where Beth and Lujack took off as well as it did, and people grabbed onto Lujack as well as they did. Because I think that people are so quick to beat down the characters before they see how it's going to develop.
Yeah,
and that's the negative part of it.
All of your stories, like at the beginning, like, you know, Judi, your first scene I think was the hospital, right?
Yes.
You're in the hospital bed with Krista, and they just, you know, building that whole Bradley story, which endeared you to the canvas immediately. Talk about James Rebhorn, and both of you got to, you know.
Yeah.
What an amazing man! What an amazing actor, and funny. He and Larry Gates with their humor, and when you got them together, it just it was like watching you know, gosh, and I'm, you know, like Billy Crystal and Robin Williams together, because they were hilarious.
Yeah, they were one. Jim Rebhorn, I adored him. I mean, considering I think we just lost Judi. Did we lose Judi?
I'm here. I'm here.
Here you are.
Sorry.
Okay. Okay.
Sorry.
So
Sa's calling me. I told him not to call me her.
He was such a sweetheart. So and Larry Gates too. In fact, I just found in a box of mementos of mine a couple months ago, and actually sent it to Scott McKinsey. I found 2 letters that were handwritten, one from Beverly to me and one to Larry Gates to me.
Oh, wow.
And I believe the one for Larry Gates was, I heard that he was in the hospital, and I sent him some flowers and a telegram. And he wrote back to me. That's what it sounds like, because I don't remember. I'm pretty sure he won the Emmy before I came on, so I don't think it was that I was sending him flowers for that. But he wrote me this beautiful letter, and I was so happy to find it recently. Yeah, it was crazy. They were wonderful people. It was a great cast overall. We had so many wonderful actors on it, and
Oh my God,
it was a
totally.
great
And
foray into
Judy, to
daytime.
have that story as your first too. I mean, you were so young. You know, I know one of our fans was asking, you know, just the impact. Stasia said to me, "Did you hear from a lot of rape survivors after that iconic story? My mom and I are rape survivors, and she saw Beth Raines as a sweet, smart, vulnerable, but strong survivor, not weak.
Yeah.
Mom was already a huge GL fan, but was inspired by Beth."
I did.
Wow.
I got a lot of letters, and talked to a lot of people who wrote, and they did have encouragement from her, able to overcome that, go to therapy, you know, find the good in life after something like that. So, uh, you know, and when I first started, I had no idea they were going to go that way. My audition scene was the prom scene. So, I was
Yeah.
I was honored to be a part of that storyline very much and affect people in such a positive way that they
Yeah.
could relate. And again, it was the writing and working with, you know, Jim Rephorn and Tina Sloan, and it just was it was a very impactful time all the way around. So.
Yeah.
I mean, you, Vincent, both of you, you've been on so many soaps. The impact. How does that resonate with you? Like just the, you know, hearing from fans, telling these stories. I mean, it's got to mean a lot. Like because you do work so hard putting it on the air, and then to get that feedback, like what this woman just said.
Yeah. Go ahead, Judy.
It when you're working on a set, you know, you forget that millions of people are watching. So you're just working on your scenes and you're doing your thing, and you know, performing really for the crew almost, or the people that you're working with. So to find yourself impacting, or the stories impacting people, especially in positive ways, or at least even letting them escape from what they're, you know, with fantasy and love and romance. It's really rewarding to know that what we're doing, in a sense, is helping people, uplifting people in some way. So
Yeah.
it's a great honor.
It is a great honor, and I honestly can't express enough how grateful I am, and I'm sure that I speak for Judy and everybody else in that medium, of how supportive the fans are, and I mean decades of support and expressed appreciation, and I mean in the beginning for me it was really kind of crazy because I had only done theater, you know, and in theater it's immediacy. You're getting the result from the audience immediately there. You're almost sharing in something together. So working on a TV show with, this is before pre-social media especially, you are kind of in a vacuum, you know, your own little world there, and you don't really get the response until it starts airing and then the story picks up. And it was a little strange in the beginning, especially like going back to how people were more team Beth and Philip in the beginning. I'd be standing on the street at a red light in New York City, and like somebody walk up to me and says, "You should leave Beth and Philip alone." I'm like, okay, I'm going to the store right now. I'm not bothering. And the lights
And
are
I'm
moving,
not, and I'm
like
not
bolting,
Lujack.
bolting, you know, and it was in the beginning. It was kind of freaky because I remember my first Emmys that I ever went to. I was at the Waldorf Astoria, and walking through the lobby and up the stairs, and there were fans on all sides, and they were screaming. It's like I walked up there, screaming my name, my character, and it freaked me out. Honestly, it was too much for me. I was overwhelmed by all the excitement of it, and I became very kind of like closed in when we were watching the Emmys. I felt kind of freaked out basically by it. It took me a while to get used to that part of it. And as the
Well,
years went
you
on,
both were so young. You both were so young for
yeah,
these
We were
roles.
babies.
I
We were
know,
babies.
Yeah.
And really didn't know what was going on. Just
I
working.
know. But I will say that back to how the importance of it and the impact that it had on people, I don't think I will ever experience it as significantly as after 9/11, because having to go back to work 2 days after the towers fell, I felt, and I know I was even shared this with Finola Hughes at the time, because we were doing scenes the morning of when it happened, and we all watched it happening on the monitors. We were the first scenes up in the morning that day, and I felt a sense of futility when we went back to work. Like, what are we doing? This just seems so unimportant to what's happening, the power, the significance, the intensity of what's happening in the world. And it wasn't until weeks later when I started getting all these letters from people telling me how important it was for them, and whether they were struggling with their own personal lives from hospitals, or even just experienced the weight of what had happened as a nation in the world, on the world stage, frankly. And I realized that it is important, that people need that escape. People need something to hold on to, something, a sense of certainty. These are shows, this was on radio and TV for 72 years, and people had watched it on TV for over 40, 50 years. So it gave me a sense at the time that it wasn't an act of futility. It was something that was necessary and important to people. And that's what it resonated.
It's interesting because even during COVID, I think even when the 4 remaining shows that are on the air couldn't produce shows, and some of them had the best of, I think the ratings were so good because people, again, we were stuck home. A lot, people lost jobs, people were sick. It was you need that. It really is something to hold on to.
24/7, COVID, and it's scary, and you're scared. And so, an hour or 2 or 3, depending on how many shows you watch, that, what a relief,
Sure.
Yeah.
And especially daytime, because you really do, become family. Like, I don't think, Vincent, like if let's say Lujack was breaking up somebody in a primetime show, that they would have come up to you on the street the same way to say, stay away from Beth. But they feel, because you're there every day in there, that you are a part of their world,
Sure. 5 days
it's
a
a
week
different
in their
thing.
living room.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a unique form of entertainment, especially as an actor, because you have a beginning of the character, and hopefully you have a really long middle, and the end is far in sight. But through that course of time, they keep developing the character from week to week, and storyline to storyline to storyline. And it's interesting also because to some degree it makes you feel like you're like a living automaton, where they can all of a sudden put a new chip in you that you didn't have before. Say, oh, you had a brother you didn't know about, or this type of thing. It's like, oh, so it's like, oh, now you have to work in that direction. I have a brother. And it's so it's interesting in that regard, but it's different from any other show, because even nighttime shows are basically 12 episodes a season. It used to be 20. Not many of them are like that anymore, 22. But you do have a beginning, middle, and end, even for a season. That's not the same with daytime. 5 days a week in their living room, new shows.
Completely. So I spoke about it in my open about Beth being blinded, and the school, working with the school, and the character of Nancy Ferris, who is J. Smith Cameron, who is fabulous on Succession. If anyone's watching, she plays Jerry on Succession.
Yeah.
What do you remember about that whole story, both of you? Because Vincent, you were pretending to be Lenny, and Beth, Judi, you went from the rape story to being blind, but working with real.
You didn't challenge her enough with the rape storyline. You wanted to,
Totally. But you actually worked with, right? Didn't they bring blind students from that school, if I remember the article correct?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, there were. And they gave me, my character was named Lenny, I think. It was something. Because you were blind, and I was playing, I was pretending to be somebody who was mute in the hospital.
That's right.
So that I could be, and
mute. I totally forgot.
I communicated with you on the piano. So everything we did, you had the dialogue, and I played the piano in response to everything that you were doing. I do remember, I can't remember the character's last name, but it was Lenny, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I don't know if he had a last name.
I think it was just Lenny.
I don't know. But, it was, again, we had so many great storylines that went from one to the next to the next. It was so cool. And for me, being my first foray into a TV show, I felt constantly challenged, and it was, honestly, Judi, I don't know if you'd agree with this, but I'm pretty sure the way back then, the scenes were much longer. They were
much
like 7,
longer.
8, 9, 10-page scenes,
Sometimes
regularly.
more.
Totally.
Just one scene, not
right,
including the whole
scene,
day of scenes.
Right, and that's what's changed a lot in daytime is that they move it faster these days, And I noticed that when I went on Young and the Restless years ago, they were the first show that I went on where they were like 2-3 page scenes. They moved it quickly, and they have a way of shooting very different from All My Children and other shows. Theirs is basically they do the wide shot, and then they do right immediately to close ups. If you see that show, that's at least when I was on, it was constantly wide shot and then close up, close up, close up, close up. So that even
really
in those
close
2-3
up
pages, really close up. And if somebody messed up a line, they could easily pick it up at that next close up, the one that preceded the mess up. So they moved fast in that way. But it's different. I look at those scenes sometimes and I remember that, wow, these were really long scenes.
They'd be like 12, 15-minute scenes. I mean, sometimes it was huge. Though I have to say, the older I get, the more I appreciate the shorter scenes.
It's not a complaint. That was not complaining. I don't want the daytime community to think I'm complaining.
Oh, that's so funny.
I'm totally on board with that. Okay.
Judi, what do you remember about the blind story? And do you remember working with J. Smith?
Yes.
Is that how you say her name? I don't even know. Like
J. Cameron Smith. Yeah.
J. Cameron Smith. Yeah.
J. Cameron Smith. She was such a great actress and adorably sweet. I loved working with her, and I went to the Lighthouse, which was the blind school that.
Thank you, because I was trying to find the name. It was called the Lighthouse.
Mm-hmm. And I went there because I was trying to research how to do it properly, and
because she didn't have enough.
Yeah.
My spare time, and a lot of times on my own time, I would walk in the streets with a cane and, just try to get the feel. I wanted to portray it as authentically, hopefully, as possible. But working with J. Smith, she was just awesome. What a sweetheart. And so good. And I'm so glad that they incorporated people who were blind because, that's something, again, another thing we have to be aware of and be gentle and, take care of each other.
Yeah. And I'm sure there's, there people who are blind who are listening to our show. I mean, Soap started on the radio. So, it was a great, thing they did, and they did it well. They did it so well. I will never forget, because it was so tragic and sad when Lujack died, and that blood curdling scream from Beverly McKinsey that I still make the hair on my back.
I just got chills thinking of that.
Yeah, I did too. All the way down my leg.
What do you remember about shooting all of that?
Well, I'm going to share something funny about it. I remember this. That was my last day working on the show, and I'm trying to remember his name. I can't remember his name right now, but Warren.
Warren Burton.
Oh my God.
Warren Burton. Yeah, Warren Burton came in that day with some tequila and some margarita mix, and I was already on the stretcher, knocked out. So it was like I didn't have to worry about working. Well, we actually all were drinking some margaritas before we did these last scenes with Beverly and everything. I don't know if you remember that, Judi. I remember that. But and it was Warren Burton who brought that in. I was like, okay, why not? I don't have any dialogue. I'm dead.
Right?
So I do remember that.
That was so sweet of him. Another sweet, great guy.
He was so great. Him and Mary Kay together.
Oh yeah. And him and Beverly together.
Him and Beverly together.
Yeah.
What did both of you learn from Beverly? Well, Vincent, you've spoken about Beverly, and we're gonna do a little thing in a couple weeks.
Sure.
Judi, tell me what did you learn from Beverly?
Oh gosh, she was so generous, such a generous person and a generous actress. I would sit in her dressing room and just basically, she'd tell stories, she'd talk about acting, she'd talk about lots of different. I learned about life, love, acting. And back in that time, I was working a steady 4 to 5 days a week. And, that's a lot of dialogue to memorize. And, I had my own struggles with it because you get slammed right into it. And she gave me the greatest tip about memorizing, because you want to come to work with your lines memorized so that you can, at least for me, so you can relax. I can relax and listen to the other person. And with all those, and sometimes there were 6 scripts, and it was just so she said, I'll give you a little tip. Say you're working Monday through Friday. You learn over the weekend. You spend at least a day, learn Friday, then Thursday, then Wednesday, then Tuesday, then Monday, and then each night review it. Wow, that's so worked. And working with her too.
Wait, so learn it. So
amazing.
Learn the furthest one out first.
Backwards, as you're learning them over the weekend, and then just review the night before, and be sure to do it like a day or two before, because your subconscious while you sleep actually, I really believe this is true, works on it. So then it just embeds itself.
I agree. Absolutely. Yeah. I agree with that too.
I hope there's actors paying attention to this, that they just learned a great tip from the one and only McKinsey. That is amazing. And then you both, again, because I know the fans love to hear Grant and Krista and Michael, you both, Krista we did Krista with Mark Lewis. I don't know if either of you, he was Kurt.
Sure.
And Krista was saying, there's nobody who can cry like Judi Evans.
Oh my God.
She said she could never do it. No one like Judi.
That's very true. And full all out crying. All out crying.
All out.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure
cry.
I had
ugly cry.
that's one thing I think I watched for. I don't know why. I mean, I am definitely a sentimental. So watching, I'm sure I cried many a time with Beth.
Well, I will say this: working opposite Judi, she definitely, when she cried, it was like all out. I mean, it honestly, it gave the impression that she had tears coming out of several orifices. It was like coming from all sides. Okay, it was like okay.
Oh, that's great.
I tell you though, I saved a lot on therapy those years. I saved a lot of money on therapy.
That's probably true. That's probably true.
And spend it all on Kleenex.
Yeah.
So I'll each of you, let's try it this way. One word for Grant, Michael, and Krista, if you can.
Oh my gosh.
So,
Michael.
Judi, Grant. Oh, Michael.
Michael, hilarious. Hilarious.
Yes, and I will
There
say
is no one like Michael, right?
Nope.
I will say definitely hilarious, but also very cheap. I would say that too. If you went out to eat with him or drink, don't expect him to pick up.
That's great.
Don't expect him to leave a tip. He was just, and I would joke about it. I said, "What's the deal, man?" He goes, well, I didn't bring a lot of money with me. I'm okay." But it was like a regular occurrence.
I love it. He's saving his bucks.
Yeah. Go ahead, sweetie.
Grant, piercing blue eyes, intensity.
Yeah, I would say that he had definitely an intensity. Grant, I would say that too. Yeah, and solid actor, that's for sure. Yeah.
All of you in that story. There wasn't. Think about it. There wasn't somebody, everybody. Yeah. That's why, on top of you talked the writing, it was all of you, I mean, even, I was watching, oh, damn, what's her name? The girl who played your ex-girlfriend from the Galahad. Darcy.
Yeah.
I just watched something online. She was phenomenal,
She is.
From, a guiding light scene. They had a scene up on YouTube, which I was shocked to see her in. I was so happy, but I mean, everybody
sending them to me. Yeah.
And Krista,
she was perfectly cast in that role. She was fantastic.
She was fantastic, and what a great girl! Oh my God.
I would say Krista, perfectly made up. Krista
Bubbly.
would come to
Yep.
work. We had 7 a.m. We had 7 a.m. call times, okay, for rehearsal, dry rehearsal. Krista would come in every day, her hair completely done, her makeup completely done. And I asked her, I said, what time do you get? She goes, I get at 5 every morning. And she lived like a few blocks away. She would get up and make sure that she looked like perfect every day when she came to work. I'm like, how do you do that? You have a makeup department here. I don't like people seeing me without my makeup. That was what
Aw.
she said.
That's so funny.
Yeah,
Judy,
she's
I have
fine.
to
And
ask,
she's beautiful. And she was beautiful.
She's
If
gorgeous.
anybody could come to work without makeup and her hair done.
well, you all look exactly the same. You all look.
I know people confuse me with Krista Tesser all the time.
No, I meant you all look the same as you did.
Yeah.
You know,
No.
John Bolger replaced Grant, and
Right.
one of our fans just wrote Judy asking what it was like because you got to work with him at Guiding Light, and then you got to work with him on Another World as well. So they were asking about what it was like working with them at two different characters.
Well, he's such a sweetheart. What a sweetheart, and another great actor.
Yeah.
And working with him was terrific. We had a great bond. And when he was on Another World, he came on, and we'd pass each other in a scene because we were in different, and we would purposely kind of go,
Yeah.
you know, so that was kind of fun because, and I know when Vincent and I only had a couple of scenes on days.
Yeah, it's true.
And I had to hate you.
Yeah.
And it was like, how's this going to be possible?
I don't know why anybody would have
really
hated me on days. I was such a likable character.
You were so warm and fuzzy.
Yeah, right. No, it's true. We only had a few scenes. We did have a few scenes, and it was you yelling at me, basically.
I know. I was hoping, for a little, reunion
but it was
thing,
something,
but
even for the audience to be able to see it. For those that watched the Beth and Lujack, to see us both working together again
it was fun.
fantastic.
And
Absolutely.
you're such a great actor,
Absolutely.
Vincent. I love working with you so much.
Same here, sweetie. Same here, honey.
Fans would love it. I would love to see you guys. Judy, a mutual friend who was on Guiding Light many years later, Orla Cassidy, told me to say hello to you.
Oh my God,
because she said you were everything. She was 23 when she got that job on Another World, and she said you were so helpful. She said you were a big part of that first job.
Oh, please.
I didn't realize you worked together because I love Orla.
She is another great actress, and what a sweetheart. And I miss her terribly.
She did a one-woman show just before COVID started in Chicago, playing Nancy Pelosi.
Oh my
God!
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
I know. I wish it was in New York. Me too. I wish it was in New York. And now, not to embarrass you, Vincent, but because the fan asked, I thought I might as well ask the question. Shirley no, sorry. Dana wanted to know, Judy, how was it kissing Vincent?
Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
Wait,
I'm kind of on the spot right now. I'm right in front
of you. I thought you were going to say a girl never tells.
Vincent, look away, Vincent, look away.
I'm grateful I've never heard anybody complain about it, so I'm grateful for that. After all these years,
cute.
I must be doing something right, I guess.
Oh,
I don't know.
Definitely.
Yeah. Can I add something?
Judy.
Can I add something? I just want to say one interesting thing about this. We brought up Another World a few times. Actually, Another World was the first soap that I was offered, and it was about a year before I did Lujack. I auditioned for a character, and they offered me the role. I had to do a 3-year, I think, or it was a test. I mean, I know they used to do like a test option deal where you had to agree to 3 years. And at the time, I was like 21, I think, and I didn't want to get stuck on a show for 3 years because I felt this is the time of my life I need to take chances. I need to get out there, and the casting director was furious with my agents for submitting me and having me go up in front of the producers.
Who was the casting? Do you know? Was it?
I don't
Betty
remember.
I wonder if Betty had it.
She did As the World Turns and Guiding Light. Betty did As the World Turns and Guiding Light.
Yeah, it wasn't
at that time. At that time, she did. Okay.
Yeah, it was interesting though because I turned it down, and the casting director was furious with my agents, And the only reason why it worked out with Lujack was because it was only a 3-day job. And I thought, okay, I can do 3 days, and then another 3 days. And then I liked the character, and that's why we settled on 2 years instead of 3.
Reeled you in.
Yeah, so I stayed. Yeah, they reeled me in, and they did it. But it was interesting.
And you only stayed at Guiding Light for 2
years as Lujack. Yeah,
wow.
I left.
Yeah, I
It
know.
was my
You
choice.
came back for 5 as Nick.
Nick, right? They offered me another year. They asked me to stay for another year, and I said no, because I made a commitment to myself that I was only going to work for 2 years on the show, and then I wanted to go to Los Angeles and take some chances and try to.
I mean,
it was a young time in my life. I wanted to.
Right, but
my
it is it's a brave decision. And Judi, I'd be curious too. That's a brave decision, Vincent. You left after 3. I mean, I'm sure they wanted you to stay.
Yep. Right before I left, I did a movie of the week. So I was in St. Croix for 6 weeks, and it was a lot of fun. And
horrible,
and like
horrible.
I know, it was so rough. And I had to scuba dive and get a tan. Never do that again. But and like Vincent, I it was exciting. I was young, but it was only a few months later after moving back to Los Angeles that I'm like, I kind of miss that working everyday thing.
It's true.
I think I need to go do that again.
I mean, I had a good first year when I first went out to LA. I mean, the first thing I did was a movie of the week with Nancy McKeon called Firefighter. And I went right from that to do Heartbreak Ridge with Clint Eastwood. Then I did Law and Order. I did that, or LA Law. I'm sorry, LA Law. I did LA Law, and then I did a mini series with Treat Williams and Robert Logia called Echoes in the Darkness. It was it was a 3-part mini series up in Toronto. So it was a good first year for me. But then the second year, I was getting work here and there, but it was the same thing, Judi. I started missing that work on a regular basis. And then Santa Barbara was offered to me towards the end of that year, and I decided, okay, I'm going back to work on a regular basis. I'm
going to go back to Guiding Light in a minute, Vincent, but since you brought up Heartbreak Ridge, Clint Eastwood, I mean, your first year off Guiding Light, and you're working with Mr. Eastwood. What is that like?
All right. Clint was honestly one of the most gracious people that I'd worked with, especially in film at that time. It was my second feature. I did the movie when I was doing Guiding Light. I did Marie, a true story with Sissy Spacek. I played her husband in that.
I remember that.
I do.
Yeah, it was.
Wow,
And that was crazy because I was offered the role, and Gail wasn't going to let me out to do it. Gail Colby, and then Dino De Laurentiis, it was his studios. He called her up, and it was only for a few days. They need to fly me out because I was only in the beginning of the movie. I was just playing this abusive husband, and he called Gail. So Gail comes back in her office, and she says, "I just had an interesting phone call." And I said, "Really?" She says, "Yes. Dino De Laurentiis called, and they asked if there's any way we could work it out." And she did an impersonation of him with his Italian accent. And she said, "So yeah, we're going to let you go for a few days. They promise they'll get you back." And I was like, "Wow, fantastic. That was great." Then with Clint, he was such an amazing person to work with. I mean, so proficient, very fast, really quick. And what I really always carried away from him was when he hired you to do the job that he believed you could do. So he didn't give a lot of direction to the actors. And we didn't realize until our first day of work, because we were an ensemble. I was with Mario Van Peebles and Pete Koch and a bunch of other people, Tom Villard. It was all together. Ramon Franco, who was actually in the Galahads with me, he was in the movie with me. But we were an ensemble. So the first day we walk up to Clint, because we had these scenes in the pool hall, and we say, "So Clint, what would you like us to do?" And he just looks at it and goes, "Why don't you go over there and do something?" And I'm like, "Oh, yeah, okay." Yeah. So we went over there and we staged the scene ourselves. We rehearsed a few times, and he came and looked at it and he goes, "All right, yeah, put the camera over here and put it over here." And then we realized from that point on, we were basically staging it, and he was watching what we did. If he had any tweaks that he wanted to tell us, he would do it. But he moved so fast, and it was 1, 2, and it was interesting because I was nominated for an Emmy that year, and I was filming the movie. And they rearranged the schedule to make sure that I can go back to do the Emmys. Aww. That's why I was at the Emmys with a shaved head over there because I
Oh,
was in the
yeah.
military. And yeah, they worked it out so that I can go back for a few days and be there for the Emmys. And that was fun. It was he was a great, really sweet guy. You know, and I adored working with him. He would be the kind of person that if we had like 30 extras after lunch, he'd walk through asking everybody how their food was and everything. He was just very respectful, you know, considerate man, you know.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
What was Robert Logia like? I just love him.
I actually worked with him twice.
Yeah.
I worked with him first in Echoes in the Darkness, and we had scenes together. Also with Gary Cole, by the way, which I'll tell you something about that in a minute. He was fantastic. I had a
Love
great
him
scene
too.
with him in Echoes in the Darkness.
Yeah.
And I hadn't seen him. I saw him like 2 years ago or a year and a half ago at the TV Academy event for Veep. And he remembered me immediately. He was like, Vincent, how you doing? And it was like 30 years ago we did that thing. I was blown away that he would have been so sweet. But Robert Logia, I worked with him on Echoes in the Darkness, and then I worked on his series that he did was Mancuso, FBI. I guest starred with him. He was great. He was a nice guy. I actually flew up to Toronto with him for Echoes in the Darkness. We were in first class together. He was kind of a gruff kind of guy, you know. He was kind of that, and he seemed like he was, you know, a curmudgeon in a way. You know, he had that.
What you
quality
saw
about
was
him.
what you got.
Yeah, kind of what you saw, what you got. He kind of seemed like he was the whole way up there. He was complaining about people smoking and how, you know, they were a bunch of sociopaths. You know, they didn't care about, you know, what they were doing to other people around them. I think in that time too, it was people were still able to smoke on airplanes.
Right.
So he was not in a good mood the whole flight. I was like, okay, can I change the subject? No, I want to talk about this. Keep talking about it. It's like, okay, all right.
Wow.
So, anyway.
Wow.
So I'm curious. Well, Vincent, can you talk a little about Out in the Street and the music video? I didn't remember because I just watched that too. Robin Gibbons was in that.
Yes, Robin Gibbons. She was part of the Galahads. Robin.
Oh yeah, and that's what I was going to ask. Does anybody know where the name the Galahads was that? Where did that gang name come from? Anybody?
I have no idea.
I really
don't.
I know. I wonder if that was, you know, where it just dawned on me. Like, I wonder, because it's a great name, isn't it?
It was a great name. It was very catchy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we were kind of catchy too, since we were so colorful with our pastel colors and
in that video,
suspenders. Yeah.
The 80s hair in that video is phenomenal.
I know, it's true. That's very true. We had a great time. We shot it. We took 2 days. We shot it in Weehawken, New Jersey, on the streets of Weehawken, and there was so many parts of that I remember fondly, and the people.
Are you a Bruce fan?
Bruce, yeah, I was a huge Bruce fan. I was huge. I would go to his concerts all the time at the arena and also at the Garden. I was a huge Bruce fan. So for them to decide to do that. And I also remember Bobby Goodman, Harley Kozak's cousin. He and I became good friends. He was an incredible piano player, and he actually taught me out on the streets on the piano. I got him the job as a musical director for the video, and we did the recording. He recorded it with me, and I'm saying this now because then he died a couple of years later from AIDS, and he was such Harley loved him so much too. She actually bought him a Steinway baby grand piano, and he was just brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And I went to see him in Arizona on his deathbed before he died, just days before.
Just in case anybody doesn't know, Harley Jane is Annabelle Reardon, but I'm sure they do.
Right.
But so everybody knows.
And I also attribute my job on Santa Barbara to Harley because I came out to LA after I finished Lujack, and I went out to LA. It was around Christmas time, and Santa Barbara was having their first holiday party, and it was at the Playboy Mansion. And Harley called me up. She said, "You're in town." I said, "Yes." She said, "Why don't you come with me to the Santa Barbara holiday party at the Playboy Mansion?" I'm like, "Gee, yeah, go to the Playboy Mansion anytime, sure." So I went with her, and Mary Ellis Bunham, who was one of the producers on the show, Santa Barbara, she came up to me, and I had just finished as Lujack. I still been airing. And she came up to me and she said, "If you ever want to come back on a daytime show, please let us know. We'd love to have you." And 2 years later, my agent called Mary Ellis, and that same day they came back with an offer without a character yet, and they said we'll find a character within the next month. So, and that's it. And it was Harley that did that.
That's so funny.
Yeah, it was crazy. I mean, but I look at all of daytime as one big repertory company.
Yeah.
You know, it really is. I mean, I've worked with so many people.
The two of you have worked. The two of you have worked with so many between all the shows you've done.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Is it possible to have a favorite role?
You know, it's hard for me because Lujack was certainly foundational for me for my television and my professional career. And I love Lujack. And I can honestly say that I think that of all the characters I've ever performed in, I think I identified the most with Lujack. At that time in my life, at that age, I felt like I really identified with him more than any. But then when I got to work on David Hayward, that was a 12-year, 13-year role. And that was the first character that I felt rivaled Lujack in any way, as far as the excitement that I had to do him and to continue. And because it was as long as it was. And I even loved Deimos too, because I loved the backstory of Deimos a lot. And I really enjoyed playing him. But I guess I have to say that Lujack is probably the most important role for me. How about you,
Judi?
You know, I feel very much the same. I mean, Beth, playing Beth, that storyline, I really attribute it to why I spent the years I've spent on daytime. That just put me in front of the audience and put me in front of, different shows. So I attribute that, playing of that character and that storyline and everything. But I don't have a favorite. If you ask me who I like playing today, it would be Bonnie. If it was a couple years ago, it would be Adrian. I love every character. They're all for different reasons, and it's really fun to be someone else.
That's for sure.
A few hours.
Well, what are some of your favorite stories that you've told in daytime, or whatever show?
What was that? I'm sorry.
What was like a favorite story or two? Storyline at All My Children Are Bold, or Days, or Another World, or Guiding Light.
That's a tough one. I mean, we've been in so many stories.
I know.
So many.
Wouldn't it be great if we could add up?
Almost Paradise was a pivotal storyline for us, because that's when the audience really gave in fully to Beth and Lujack, and we had such a blast out there in Montauk. We had.
And why do you think we have hundreds of people watching us today because of that Almost Paradise?
It's true. It's true.
That's crazy. What do you think? I know, what Beverly shared with you, Judi, about learning your scripts. But what do you think Guiding Light taught you that you've taken truly throughout your entire career?
Because of the nature of the stories that I was involved in right from the get-go, that was school for me, to dig deep and be raw and be so present in the moment. And I mean, I didn't have any style or really didn't know much about anything, life in general. And I learned so much as an actress on that show with the actors I worked with. And, I learned about how to commit to this moment right now, listen, and just whatever comes out, comes out. Emotionally.
And it did.
I would say for me, because again, it was the TV, it was working in television was new for me. I had been doing theater for years, and to get a new script every day, as much as we did, especially with our character, we worked 4 or 5 days every week, for the years that I was on there. And I just learned the level of professionalism that was required from actors like Beverly McKinsey and Larry Gates and people like that. I mean, and I carried that throughout my whole time, my career, and the memory of that, and and then watching it with other people as well, like working with Angela Lansbury when I worked as a guest star on Murder, She Wrote. And
did I hear a story that you just went to set to watch her?
Yeah, I did. I was every show that she did, every episode, you remember she had her long monologue at the end where she would tie the whole story together and explain why this person was the murderer, right?
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to see her film that. And she came in, she was doing that like 8 in the morning. So I came in early to go sit there, and I literally sat off camera watching her shoot that. And she was, every camera shot was one take straight through, every time, never stopped, never break for a moment. And I was just watching her, and I was like, this woman's amazing. But more importantly, that's obviously significant for production, but it was her attitude about it. She brought such a joy and a respect to everybody that was there on that soundstage. And as a result, it was a trickle-down effect. That show was on 8 years when I went on there, okay? That was one of the most pleasant sets I've ever worked on, because people were respectful towards one another. People worked hand in hand, side by side, to get the job done professionally. And that's the way it is usually on shows and movies. It's the people at the top, how they are on a professional level and also on a personal level, that trickles down to everybody else, and people respect that way. I could say that honestly, there was another show, and I'm not going to say who the actor was on it, but that person was not that way, and he was constantly going off his lines. And even working with him, opposite him, I would be doing my scene, camera was on me, and he'd mess up his line and throw me off, and we'd have to stop and go back. It was constantly like that. And honestly, everybody on the set, the crew, were hostile towards each other and towards the others and extras. I heard a crew member be really hostile and abusive to an elderly woman who was an extra on the set. And I'm like, that's because of the lead actor. That's why, because he's created this environment where everybody's tense and angry. So that's by comparison.
But it's so interesting because you can learn so much by just being in an environment. You know, I started my career as a page at ABC, and I just, everywhere I walked, I just wanted to pay attention to what was happening and talk to people because it might have led to something else.
Yes, absolutely. You know, it's funny you bring that up because Michael O'Leary started as a page at CBS.
Oh, yeah.
He got his audition for Guiding Light when he was working as a page
I
at CBS
totally
in
forgot
Los
that.
Angeles. Yeah.
That's right.
That's
He told me that
right.
story a long time ago.
Wow.
Cool. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
That is great. Speaking of, one of the shows I worked on was Regis and Kathy Lee. But Judi, right after you won the Emmy, I think the next day, you were on with Regis when it was the morning show with Erica Slezak. Do you remember that?
Yes.
It was very funny because the clip is online, and Regis asks Erica how long she's been on One Life to Live, and she says 14 years, and then turns to you and says, how long have you been on? And you go, 1 year. And Erica's like, that girl's got it.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, Erica Slezak's always been a class act,
It was crazy.
Yeah.
So amazing. What another great lady.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And great actress. Oh
Definitely.
my gosh.
You know, Judi, it's funny. You and I, because the characters really took off, the storyline took off. I don't know if you remember, we did a lot of personal appearances together in different parts of the country. I remember one we did in upstate New York. I don't know if you remember that.
Oh,
there was like thousands of people. It was huge. And it was a fair that they had there. And I remember
the helicopter.
And we went on the helicopter where we got, and this guy was a post-Vietnam veteran helicopter pilot, and he took us for a ride that was freak because it wasn't just us like hovering. It was like going down into like the river, towards the river, and sideways, and then coming up and then turning this way and going that. I walked out of there. I was green after that. I was like, all right.
I remember that.
I lost all sense of equilibrium, and I'm like, this is not as fun as I was hoping it was going to be. And we got off, and I was like, I'm so happy that's done. I'm so happy that's done. We had some great appearances. We
did crazy.
And we left from there, and then we went to a house that you had with John in New Jersey, somewhere at the lake.
Pennsylvania.
We went and spent a few days Pennsylvania.
Oh, yeah.
That's right. Yeah, we went and spent a few days there hanging out with us there, and a few other people from the cast.
So
and
nice.
it was awesome. We had a great time.
It was. Really
great
was.
summer.
Did you live in New Jersey?
I'm sorry?
No, Judi, did you live in New Jersey?
Well,
I heard.
At the time I lived in Manhattan, but we had a house, a rental house in the summer in Pennsylvania. But then when I came back, when I left days and went back east, I lived in New York for just a little bit and then moved to New Jersey, where I spent the next 10 years.
Whereabouts? Because I'm out in Jersey.
Started off in Woodcliff Lake, then Saddle River, and then
Oh
my
yeah.
gosh, I was out in Passaic County in the mountain. Well, not that they have mountains in New Jersey. What they considered a mountain. It was a really big hill.
I just wondered. Somebody
People
said,
hey.
in regards to the Galahad question, somebody said Sir Galahad, son of Lancelot. I don't know if that had anything to do with it.
Probably,
Yeah, well,
knowing
I know that's
Pam,
where
probably.
I know where the name comes from, sure.
Yeah.
Sir Galahad, but I don't know why they named the gang that. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe it was some favorite of hers. Before we go, is there anything you've learned about yourself during this quarantine that you didn't know prior?
I would say for me that I was allowing my hair to grow, not being able to get my hair cut for 7 months, which I cut it yesterday, but for 7 months and let my beard grow, that I looked like I could do a Western, and I finally did because of it. So prior to that, I had no knowledge. I never would have thought of myself in a Western until I looked at myself one day, and I even said that to my girlfriend, Yvonne, at the time. I said, I think I could do a Western now. And my first audition was a month later for a Western, and I got it because of the look. So
what Western?
Well, it's actually, I can't give too much about it right now because it's a series and they're still filming it. And,
okay, great.
It's going to be out in the beginning of next year. I was a guest star on it, and they talked about bringing me back for the roles. But it's true stories about people in the West, and I definitely looked the part without question because of my long hair and my beard. So
there's a reason.
He sent me pictures. He looks amazing.
It was pretty funny. It was pretty funny. I was like, wow, I could be in a Western. This is cool. So,
and Judi,
can I do your stunt writing? Can I do your stunt writing?
Yes, honey. Yes, I think you could pass off as a double for me.
I wear a beard.
Yeah.
Judy, did you learn anything?
Oh, well, I learned, this is going to sound awful. I learned that I can go up to almost 7 days not changing my clothes pretty much, sleeping in the same clothes, and not showering for I think the longest stretch I did was 7 days. And thank God my husband has severe allergies because I know. I mean, I learned that I could be really lazy if I let myself.
Yeah, for good reason. I don't think it was lazy.
Exactly.
Other reasons why
you needed to recover. Vincent, Tom was asking, a fan was asking, would you consider bringing, if they asked you, Dr. David over to General Hospital?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I would love to play opposite Finola again and also to develop that character again. David Hayward was an amazing character. I loved him. He was so multifaceted in so many ways. I mean, he could be villainous, and nefarious, and other times he was, you could see that he was a man who had a heart, which is not an easy thing to do. But it's considering that he was a world-renowned cardiologist, he should at least have a heart, right?
Yeah, he should. Yeah. You've played 3 doctors, haven't you?
Yeah, I have. And
that's got to be hard.
I was telling. I told
seriously.
If Michael O'Leary can play a doctor, Judi.
Yeah, medicalese is not the best part of the job. It's sometimes you have to give these speeches that go on forever, and after it's done, people are like, "Do you really know what you said?" No, I don't remember what I just said. I'm done. I'm like, it's out of my mind.
Killed as many as Dr. Rick Bauer?
Have I what?
Killed as many people as Dr. Rick Bauer?
Probably not. Because I was a world-renowned cardiologist, so I was pretty successful. If I brought anybody to the brink of death, it was on purpose to teach them a lesson, basically. So, but I would love to play the character again if that was the case, or even if they revived All My Children again, which I keep hearing some news about that, but who knows? We've been hearing that for a couple of years now, so I don't know.
Wow.
We'll see.
That would be amazing. Well, somebody needs to write a movie for Beth and Lujack. Anybody they're listening?
But Lujack would have to come back from the dead.
Oh, that's true.
Never happens in our medium.
Never. Not once.
Never. or
But I
have a
guess
twin
in some ways
brother.
they did do that with me
Well,
coming back as Nick.
Yeah, I have a
That's true.
question. Was there ever a consideration that Nick would be Lujack?
You know, not that I know of. I know that, it's so crazy because Bob Calhoun was the one who approached me about coming back on the show. And it was right after I did Lucky Chances. And I told him, I met with him for lunch out in Los Angeles. And Bob, you remember Bob. Judi,
Oh
sure.
my God, I loved
Yeah.
Bob.
Bob was fantastic. Love Bob. We met for lunch and I told him, well, just give me some time. I need to like sort of play this out for a little bit. And it was like 6 months later, he called me and I was going to go to New York. And I said, all right, let's meet again. And I met with him, and John Riley was, right? Is it John Riley?
Right.
He was
yeah.
writing for the show at the time. And we went to the Carlisle.
Jim Riley.
Jim
Riley.
Riley. And we had drinks at the Carlisle hanging out with me and Bob Calhoun and Jim Riley and talking about the possibility of bringing back the character. And, but it was never, and he told me, because we talked, I said, but he died. And he said, we'll work around that. Don't worry about it. So
it never happened.
But then Jim left and Bob and I were communicating. And then he said, let's talk with the writers. And we did a conference call with the writers and we were kind of spitballing and everything. And they came up with the idea of me coming back as a twin. And I said, that's great. Let's do it. Yeah. And that's when I decided to do it. But the crazy thing was, it was like over a year working with Bob Calhoun towards this end. And the first week that I went on the show, Bob left the show the week before. He retired. And it was like, and it was Jill Phelps was coming on, and I had worked with her in Santa Barbara, but I'm like, Bob,
Really?
You and I were doing this together for the last year plus. So it was really a big surprise, but I don't think he was ever intended to be Lujack. I can't remember that they were going to bring back the character. So, no. But it was
was it a good 5 years playing Nick?
I would say this. It was a really good three and a half years. The character, I loved it, especially in the beginning, first couple of years, 3 years probably, 3.5. But they went through so many writer changes at the time and executive producer changes. And when that happens to the hierarchy, it shakes everything up. And by time the fifth year, 4.5, 5 years, they really lost sight of the character. I didn't know who he was. And when I kept going in and talking to the producers at the time, it wasn't Jill anymore. And there was Michael Lapson at one point. There was another one. And I was like, this is not the character anymore. So after 5.5 years, I think that's when I decided.
That's when you got to play with Marge, right?
Yeah. And Marge was fantastic. Don't get me wrong. I mean, talking about a recast that's almost impossible to fill the shoes of Beverly McKinsey. That's crazy. But Marge coming in and playing that role, brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
And then to do it, then to come on All My Children.
I know.
My mother on there again. And I remember with
it's really great that happened.
Yeah, and it's Judi Wilson, the casting director. I always used to go downstairs after they were testing for a role that was going to be opposite me. So after they tested the actresses, I didn't know who had tested. And I went to her and I said, okay, so who do you feel good about? She goes, oh, we love Marge Doucet. And I was like, oh my God, she played my mother on Guiding Light. She's brilliant. And she's like, oh, I don't know if that's good though. And she said, I don't know if they're going to want someone who played your mother. And I'm like, what I said to you guys earlier, I said, but this is one big repertory company. We all work together. It's a different role. She's the right one for the role. Please, advocate for her. So they saw the test, everything, and they hired her. And she was freaking amazing. She was amazing. And I'm so grateful. I called Marge last September. I was in New York and I was thinking of her and I hadn't spoken to her in years. And I called her up just to say hello. And she was struggling physically at the time, but she was grateful to hear from me. We talked for a good 10 minutes and I'm grateful that I had a chance to do that because she passed away soon after that. Yeah. So at least that I had reached out to her and just to check in with her, to say hi. So
that's awesome. You did that.
Yeah.
Hey, Judi,
you have such a good heart. You're so sweet.
He's a good man.
Oh my God.
Mm-hmm.
You're so sweet.
We're all part of the same journey. Yeah. You know what I mean? We are.
Totally.
I have so many wonderful memories with so many amazing people. And when you ask, what did we learn even from playing these roles? It's just working with people like Judi, and with others. You learn from them, just being opposite them and feeding off of them while you're in the moment, It's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing when you get to do that with somebody. you know.
Sure. Judy, fans were asking, did you ever turn on the CBS and Guiding Light to see Beth Chamberlain play Beth Raines?
I did a couple of times. I did. She was great. She was really great. And then I think she had a second. She played two characters, right? But was it Beth had
amnesia at one time, many years later.
Great. She was great.
Lorelai. And Vincent, fans were asking, did Nick and Beth never cross, or was Beth not there?
No, that's interesting that you asked that about Beth Chamberlain. It was strange for me going on the show, even as Nick, to see that it wasn't Judi playing Beth. But it was even more strange for me that they had changed the character to become where she was kind of like a, you know, she had kind of like a villain type quality. You know, she had her own little nefarious thing going on there. And I'm like, that doesn't seem like the same character. That was a totally different character. But I really didn't play opposite her much. I may have been.
No, fans were asking. Right.
Yeah.
They don't think Nick and, which they thought was weird since Lujack and Beth, you know, fans were asking that question.
It's interesting because I don't remember really having many scenes with Beth. I really don't, which is odd. But I guess since I was Nick, but still, given the similarities to Lujack.
A fan just reminded me that when Chamberlain came back, she was mute. So not only was Beth blind, she was also mute.
That poor character, man.
The character of Beth Raines has definitely been for the ringer. There is no doubt on Guiding Light.
Ringer Raines.
Wow. Well,
guys, this has been so fun. I'm so glad we could do this.
Same here.
Me
this
too.
Really
wonderful.
Let's all smile. I'm going to take a picture. I'm going to take a picture of all of us. So smile. I'll tell you when. 1, 2, 3. Great.
Aww.
Yeah, this has been amazing. Oh, wait. I'm going to say one more.
Okay.
Oh, really?
I wasn't looking. It would help if I was looking in the right place. Okay, here we go. 1, 2, 3. Thank you both so much. I hope fans enjoyed it.
Frozen expression.
Oh, wait.
You should have had Vincent take the picture. He is amazing at framing a picture.
Yeah, but I can't do it from here. I don't know. Yeah, I do selfies.
Did you
You're the best.
Because that's something I didn't know, and I love photography myself. Did you study it?
I actually started photography when I was like 11 years old, working with a 35 millimeter single reflex lens. If I remember, the first one I had was a Canon A1, and it was my friend. Oh, really? That was yours? I had the Fuji from school, and then I had a Canon that was my own. And my friend Michael Maciosio, who I grew up with on Long Island, he had a darkroom, and he taught me how to develop my own prints and develop film at the time. So it's something that I carried on for years and years and did photography with, and I've gone into the whole digital age too, which is totally different than it was so expensive as a hobby back then because you had to buy the paper, you had to buy the chemicals, you had to get the film, you had to do, everything had to be done. Now it's all on your computer and you just remove what you don't want and you correct what you don't like, and it's totally different. I took classes when I was in high school, and once years later, I think I took another class and I rented a darkroom in Santa Monica that doesn't even exist anymore.
I would have so many pictures from coming outside Guiding Light if digital had been around. I mean, I still have saved some, but there are some that I have in my basement in the storage in negative form. I would love. It's so crazy because now, like with digital, I just snap and forever. Yeah, it's great.
It's crazy.
And it's great. So, please stay well. Thank you for doing this.
Too.
I really appreciate it, everybody. Have a great evening. You guys stay here for a minute.
It was a pleasure.
We'll sign off in a minute.
All right. Love you.